Three tips, one goal, your first job in IT. I'm going to share actionable strategies that can help you stand out and land your first tech job. So let's get into it. So we're going to be sharing some job hunting tips on how we can do it. And the first one is creating your resume and a cover letter. Now, that's obvious. Everybody needs one. But I'm going to share with you some tips that will help you stand out from the rest because recruiters, managers, they get hundreds of resumes. How do you stand out from the rest? Well, the first one is tailor your resume to the job posting that you're looking to apply for. You take some of those keywords that are in the job resume, job posting, the roles and responsibilities, and put them in your resume. Now, what does that do? Well, it shows that you align with it, and don't unless you actually don't have any experience, don't just add it just because you saw it there. But make sure you actually have experience in the area. But what that does is there's even tools that recruiters use that sift through the resumes, and what will help them is reading your resume to the matching it to the job description, and says, "Oh yeah, this resume has a 70% correlation to the job posting or scoring, some sort of scoring." So the higher you score, the more likely you're going to be looked at. Your resume is going to be looked at. So that's why it's always good to tailor your resume just to that job and add those keywords in there, as long as they apply to what you've done. The other thing is to list your own achievements, not just what you do in your past work, but things that you've achieved in your past work. Even if it doesn't exactly relate to that job that you're trying to apply for, but there's learnings from it. Um, like, oh, I was able to migrate this one thing to this, right? I was able to build this program. And so they can see like, oh, this person's actually done something in their job that may be useful. Maybe not that specific thing, but that skill set that you've shown by what you've achieved. Writing a cover letter, not just about yourself, but about the company. So an idea might be, hey, there's a little bit about myself. I noticed about your company's website, that you're in high tech, you're in data. I actually want to get into data. I want a job in high tech. And it shows how you would be a good match for the company when you write that cover letter. And the last thing is, don't list anything that you can't back up. Um, that's I've done many interviews and for candidates, and when I would ask them a question about something they put on their resume and they have no idea about it, I was like, well, why do you have that on your resume? That's actually a negative in my book when you do that. Like, if you're going to put something on a resume, you have to be ready to talk about it. So make sure that you're doing that whenever you put something in your resume. Now, the other here is the most important one is networking. Um, that's actually how you're going to find the right job or a company that's willing to hire you. Have a LinkedIn profile. If you don't have one already, create one. If you have one, update it. Because that does is recruiters, they're constantly searching. They're using LinkedIn to find possible candidates. Even for me, I get uh, messages in LinkedIn from recruiters saying, "Hey, we noticed that your LinkedIn profile is a good match for this open job we have," and I'm already employed, and but they're that's how they're finding people. So having a good LinkedIn profile, fill out all the things that it asks you to do there. Another one is uh, career fairs. Now, when I was in college, they had these career fairs, and so these are companies that are looking for people like you, the younger people, people who are just getting into their career, and they want to hire these people. So go to these career fairs. There might be virtual ones too. Be ready with your resume though. So you may not be able to tailor it to that specific job, but be ready to share it with them. Like, oh yeah, I have my job interview, my resume, and if you have any openings, maybe some of my skill sets might match what you're looking for. The third one here is word of mouth. Now, word of mouth is probably the best one because It's someone that you know that is able to vouch for you and be some kind of referral for you. And so like something like 80% of jobs, we found a statistic saying that that many percentage of jobs is filled by word of mouth referrals. So that's a huge thing. And I've actually it's happened for me a couple of times with a couple of jobs that I've been in. Um, there was when I was getting out of college, I had a friend who worked for a company that they had summer internships. So he called me and says, "Hey, are you looking for a job in IT?" I said, "Yeah, I am. I'm getting out of school soon." And so he said, "Oh, well, they have internship programs. Here's how to apply. I'll send you the link, and you can put my name down as a referral." So I did that, and so that when they were reviewing my application, the hiring IT director called my friend that worked for the same company. He says, "Hey, do you know this person?" He says, "Oh yeah, I know him." And they asked him a few questions, so that actually helped me get my foot in the door to get to that internship. Another time, um, I had previously worked with another person at another company, and and then they got a job, and then they were building out a team, and they had an opening, and they called me and they say, "Hey, I have this opening on my team. Are you interested in filling it?" And that was just word of mouth. I didn't even know that there was an opening there. So those are ways of word of mouth is very important. Just telling people that you're looking for a job in this area, they'll think about you like next time they hear something they're like, oh yeah, let me reach out to you and I'll tell you if I hear something. The last one here is local businesses. Now I've done this as well too. Just reach out to local businesses that may be in tech that you're interested in. IT companies, there's like what they call managed service providers. You can go and reach out to them. You can talk to them and say, "Hey, you have any openings? Have your resume? Leave your resume with them. Visit the office." They may not even have an open position, but if you're there and say, "Hey, I'm looking for a job in this area. Do you have something?" Maybe they'd be like, "Well, not right now, but we'll keep it. Maybe in the future." Or maybe they might think about like, "Well, we could use some extra help. Let me reach out to this person who came by." So you're reaching out to these places. Maybe you might actually get an interview. Um, how do you prepare for that? Well, one is research common questions you might be asked. Be ready to answer these questions. I actually asked a Gemini over here to help me a bit. What type of questions would I be asked in an interview for an IT support role? And it came up all these questions like, what is the BIOS? What is the blue screen of death? Like everybody knows what the blue screen of death is. So those are technical questions. But then there's like, they'll ask you, describe. Have you experienced remote troubleshooting? Um, how do you troubleshoot? They may even ask. There was one about, tell us a time when you made a mistake. How do you handle it? How do you handle it? There's also this method right here, the STAR method. Talks about when you're asked a situation, to bring up an example. What's the situation? What's the task? What's the action? And what's the result? So if someone asked you, tell us a time when you were challenged with something that you hadn't done before, and you know, and how did you handle it? What was the outcome? So I'll give you one. So if someone asked me that, and I would say, well, there was this time when we were merging with another company. We're actually extracting our business unit out of one company and dropping it into another company. And so we had to discover um, all the different services and apps that we had in the existing company, and then find a place for them to go into the new company. And so we built out a project plan, we built out the list and all the requirements of each of those apps, and then we executed, we scheduled them, and migrated each one of them over the course of 6 months. And then so when we were completed with that, we completed on time. And what that did was that we were able to save the company hundreds of thousands of dollars, because if we hadn't moved out on time, then we would have been charged overage services fees or whatever it might be if we didn't get out on time. So that's an example if you have an example yourself of the situation that was happened, what you had to do, how you went about doing it, and then what was the result of it. So that was a STAR method. Have mock interviews. Ask someone, a friend, a family member, say, "Hey, can here's a list of questions. Can you pick one or a couple of the questions and ask me, and I need to be prepared for an answer." So that gets your mind thinking. So when you're in the interview, you're not like, "Oh no, I don't know what to say," and you freeze up. You're like, "No, I've rehearsed this. I know what this is like. I'm ready to answer questions, even questions that I haven't practiced for, but I'm used to being questioned, and that will help you give good answers." Another thing is ask questions. I like it when I'm interviewing and someone asks me questions. I'll even pause during the interview and say, "Hey, do you have any questions for me?" Because as much as I'm interviewing you, you're interviewing me in the company if this is a good place for you to work. So have questions prepared if you're open to it. It shows your interest in the job and in the company. When people say, "Oh no, when I ask them if they have any questions, they say, "Oh no, you described that perfectly." I was like, "Well, I can't describe it perfectly in 30 minutes. Like there has to be something you're thinking about. You're not asking me." So be ready to ask questions. It shows you're interested in the job role and what you might be doing because it's good for you. You want to know what the role would be involved with. The last one is stand out. Now, there's you want to stand out and leave a good impression on whoever's interviewing you. And you have to think about the hiring manager, the person that's interviewing. They may be interviewing dozens of people. I was interviewing multiple people a week, and sometimes honestly, I lose track of who they are. It's like I may take some notes after the interview, but I don't remember all of them. So you need to be able to stand out in a good way. A couple ways of doing that is just being personable with the person. Try to build that connection with them. I know it's a short period of time, but you want to be able to say, like, when I'm interviewing someone, I'm saying, is this like if this was a one-on-one with the candidate, would this person be a good fit for our team? Would this person communicate well with me? Am I able to get my messages across? Do I understand them? So when you do those types of things, like, oh, okay, like, yeah, I really remember that person. Tell me stories of situations that you've been in. Like, oh yeah, I remember that guy. He did this, or he told me about this time. Um, so standing out so that when that person revisits your resume, like, oh yeah, I remember this person. Because sometimes you have a lot of people that you're interviewing, but you only grab a few candidates that you think are like the finalists for the role, and you want to be in one of those finalist spots. So you'll need to stand out in some way. The last thing, a pro tip is uh, go reach out, go back multiple times to the company you're interviewing with until you hear an answer is no. The answer might be yes, but you don't know unless you reach out or you just wait. Uh, one of the one example I have is actually back in when I was in high school and I was interviewing for a job. I actually interviewed for the job already, and it was actually my mother. She asked me, she's like, "Oh, did you hear back from that job?" I said, "No, I haven't. I interviewed for it. It seemed to go okay." And she said, "Well, why don't you go out there and see if the job's still open or if they filled it or if they want to hire you or not?" I said, "Just go unannounced?" She said, "Yeah, just go." I said, "Okay." So I got in my car, I left. I went to that office building, and I actually got to meet the owner of the business. Whereas before, when I interviewed, I didn't have I interviewed with someone else, and so I went and I got to chat with the owner just for a couple minutes, and he said, "Well, um, Let me think about it. I asked, is it the job still open? You going to hire me? And he said, let me think about it. I said, okay. At least I was present. He got to see who I was. I was interested in the job. I came back. And so I said, okay, well, at least I got that done. So I walked out, walking to the parking lot to my car. And then the guy who interviewed me the first time came out and he says, oh, the owner thought about it. He said, yeah, we're going to hire you. So I came back into the office, filled out some paperwork, and I started there. I think a week later or something. So that's just an example of what you can do, reaching out to people multiple times. That shows their interest in the job, and you're not bugging them. You're just showing like, hey, like I want this job. I would like to have it. Let me know. Yeah, either way, yes or no, if I'm going to get it or not. So those are just some good tips to help you to think about as you're looking to get your own job. And if you can watch some of my other videos about how to get started in an IT career.